Yes, thank you, Chair. Members will notice an amendment that's been circulated, because after my original motion was accepted, officers then advised that I needed to make the second paragraph relate to the role of the Mayor rather than the government. So hence a last-minute amendment. But it doesn't diminish the case that this is something that certainly needs debating. The Electoral Reform Society, in their report on the elections, their analysis, have said this is the most disproportionate election ever. 50% of votes nationally went to candidates who didn't win, and 74% of votes nationally didn't actually contribute to electing an MP. They either went to a losing candidate or they went to a majority for an MP that wasn't actually needed to elect them. I think it really is time we had a proper debate on our electoral system, and I do think there's a lot that can be learnt from the system that we have here in the London Assembly that I think has worked well over the 15 years, and personally I think it does provide the best of both worlds. You get the individual constituency representation, which is important, but with the top-up list it also ensures overall proportionality, and that the way people vote is actually reflected in the makeup of the chamber. I've always been a big fan of this system long before I was ever elected by it. It was actually gifted by the Allies to post-war Germany when they were rebuilding a democratic system there, and the objective was to combine the need for stability with the need for proper democratic representation. I think it has served Germany well. It has served Scotland and Wales well. It is serving London well. And I think on so many issues, this Assembly has actually been ahead of the game. In terms of Westminster debating the smoking ban in the early days of the Assembly, which we came out in favour of, civil partnerships, which we came out in favour of, migrants amnesty, and so on. So I think again this is an issue where the Assembly can hopefully be ahead of the game again in calling for a clear national debate on the need for a more proportional electoral system. So I do hope we can get support from members for this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I call on the seconder, Assembly Member Jones?
Formally reserve the right, Chair.
Thank you. Assembly Member Shawcross?
Thank you, Chair. The Labour Group will be supporting this motion because at its heart it does call for basically a public debate. That the British people should have an opportunity to debate the health and the future of their democracy, and we all think that that is the right thing to do. But I think, having said that, my party, like some parties around this table, there is a real breadth of opinion within those parties as to what is the best way forward, and I wouldn't want to be prescriptive about that at all. But from a personal point of view, so these are personal comments, I would say it's noticeable that the new political institutions that were designed under the previous Labour government, all of them have an element of proportional representation. This body here was designed under a Labour government, and I think it was very foresightful in doing that. Personally, I look at the fact that 2/3 of the population of the UK did not vote Conservative, but they now have a very strong majority Conservative government, or relatively strong, is an issue. I think it's an issue, actually, that the Liberal Democrats got more votes than the SNP, and yet the SNP have got 50 more MPs, nearly, than the Liberal Democrats. I think it's an issue for the British people that 1 million people voted Green, and there is only one Green MP, and as hard as I would go out and campaign against your parties, if people vote in such large numbers for that representation, then as a Democrat I believe that that's what they deserve. So, you know, there are very strong views within the parties, but I think the thing that we could and should all agree on, that it is high time to have a debate. And we need a debate designed around what is the purpose and function of national government and how is it best to organise that representation. And I think that's one of the reasons why what we've got here at the London Assembly has actually worked, because it was designed around the subject of scrutiny, consensus building, and I think pretty grown-up politics, and we've had some successes, I think, because of that ability to reach across party divisions, and I would hope that we would have a constructive debate about how to refresh our national democracy, because I think there are perils for it if it doesn't change and adapt to the change going on in our society and going on in our information technologies and going on in people's modes of political thinking and action. So I personally support it extra strongly.
Thank you. Assembly Member Boff.
I speak as some. I mean, I'm not just giving my party line here, because Assembly members may know I was a rebel during the referendum on AV, but AV was not proportional representation. It was about ensconcing the idea of small constituencies with individual representatives who represented their people in the House of Commons. I am not going to support PR. I am not going to support a system that gives voice to Nazis, because that's actually what we've seen. And then in the PR system we've run here, we had Nazis elected to the London Assembly, and you think that's all right with a tiny proportion of the vote? Let's actually talk about what a representative democracy is about. It's about sending somebody you trust to represent you and your interests in Parliament, not adding up the colours of their badges all over the nation and then saying, hand it all around according to the colour of the badges. It's giving faith in a representative. And that's what the value of our system is. I'm no lover of first past the post, as you know, but that single member, single representative model is a very, very strong one and runs through the British Constitution. I am not in favour of tinkering with that particular model. And yet, peculiarly, people who've spoken up from PR are the ones who are most enemies of democracy. There, and the localism bill that was proposed by the coalition government, we had a proposal in there for citizens' initiatives, direct democracy, giving power to people at a local level to be able to propose measures for local councils. And who was it who got that removed from that bill? Who was it of the coalition that said they didn't want that in the bill? They didn't want to give people the power. It was the Liberal Democrats. It was that supposed proponents of democracy and PR. So no, I do not believe in a system that gives more power to parties and less power to people. I believe in a system that gives representatives a link with their electors, and if you don't like your representative, you chuck him out of the next general election. You don't wait for backroom deals in party headquarters to allocate who's flavour of the day and then put them in Parliament for you. This shouldn't have been debated. It's as though debates never happened. It's as though nobody has ever talked about PR. We've been talking nothing but PR since I was a boy and experienced the elections of 1974, when the party that won got less votes and the party... I mean, it's ridiculous. The debate carries on. But let's not be detracted from the fact that our Constitution, the one that gives one member, one vote in the House of Commons and ties it to constituency, is the gold standard of our democracy, and we let go of it at our peril.
No.
Yes, absolutely. And do you know, my name is not even on the ballot paper. How is that democracy? How is that democracy?
Okay, sorry. We've got another member who wishes to speak. Assembly Member Bacon, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm tempted not to after that impassioned, because I can't follow that in anything like the same way. Look, the point is, the debate about electoral reform is interesting. and where I agree with Val Shawcross is that I think we could have a very good seminar about this, because I think there are probably points about it that all members would agree on, and the same members would then disagree on other points about electoral reform. My personal view, I take every point that people have made about regional elections around the country and how we do that, and there is a place for some form of proportionality, and I think if we ever get to the stage where we have an elected House of Lords, I think there would be a strong case for some sort of regional PR element to that. Notwithstanding, we need to work out the detail. Personally, I think the general election is about selecting a government for the country whilst maintaining a direct democratic link to the person you send to Westminster to represent you. Proportional representation would fail on that count completely, because it would be exactly like the list system that we have here, where who goes to the House of Commons will be determined by a committee of party apparatchiks in whatever party headquarters that you have. That's not democracy, to my mind. Representation is one thing, government is another. And the good thing about first past the post is that it has always delivered stable government in this country, and you play with that at your peril. We've heard the examples of Germany, and it's an example that's trotted out often about stable government since the war. That's perfectly true. You could also look at Italy, where they have a form of proportional representation, and they had something like 50 governments in 50 years, and it's complete chaos. What you would also get with proportional representation, which I think is an absolutely damning indictment of it, is that the people who go to the ballot boxes would have no control over the government that comes out at the other end, because that would be stitched up by politicians unaccountably in dark rooms talking to each other and horse trading. It wouldn't be based on a manifesto that they were elected on. The other good thing about first past the post is you can boot out governments when they become unpopular. We saw it regrettably in 1997. We saw it again in 2010. We've seen it in elections throughout the history of this country. Unpopular governments lose elections. Under PR, what you would end up with is the same clique of people broadly coalescing around probably the centre-left who would be in power permanently. That is not democracy, to my mind. Being able to kick the buggers out, for want of a better expression, is one of the great strengths of the current electoral system, and I think that playing around with that would be at our peril, and we would regret it for eternity, so I will not be supporting this motion.
Thank you. Assembly Member Jones.
Nothing to say, thank you.
Summation, Assembly Member Johnson.
Thank you. Just very quickly, I'll come back on 2 points. Andrew's point that the system here allowed the Nazis to get elected into City Hall. Well, it did, but first past the post in numerous councils at the same time also allowed the far-right BNP to get elected, and actually having the 5% threshold here has been important in ensuring that at least you need to demonstrate a level of public support before you get into this chamber, and I think that has been a useful and important safeguard. The other thing I'm just going to come back on is this idea that single member representation, single member constituencies for MPs is the gold standard of the British Constitution. Well, that is just rubbish. You don't need to go back that far when all constituencies were multi-member constituencies in this country. That was we did have multi-member constituencies before the reforms in the Great Reform Act. It was a standard part of the British Constitution. So the idea it could never be changed is just complete nonsense. I think it has been shown to work well, as Valerie Shawcross says, in the new institutions that we have seen introduced since 1997. It has worked well. It is working well here. And it's about time we at least looked at it and debated it and discussed it for Westminster.
Thank you. Now put the motion to the vote. Those in favour of the motion? 11. Those against the motion? 5. So 11 in favour of the motion, 5 against. That motion is passed. Okay, quickly on.